Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at Space Cowboy Books Online this evening. I'm your host, Jean-Paul Garnier, and for tonight's Flash Science Fiction Night, we have teamed up with Shacklebound Books to bring you stories from their anthologies. I'm going to hand it over to Eric from Shacklebound Books for a second to introduce himself, and then we'll move into the reading part of the event. Over to you, Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric Fomley. I'm the editor of Shacklebound Books. Shacklebound Books publishes flash fiction and drabbles. Drabbles are stories of 100 words. Flash fiction's anything under 1,000 words. We publish fantasy, we publish horror, we publish science fiction. I think we're up to, I want to say, 14 anthologies out now. So yeah, I mean, it's just trying to push what flash fiction can do.
Thank you, Eric. Shacklebound is doing wonderful work, and you can get all their books at Space Cowboy Books. We're very enthusiastic about the publication of drabbles and flash fiction, and we have teamed up to with Shacklebound to sponsor one of their new anthologies, Dread Space Volume 2. It's a fantastic collection of militaristic dark science fiction stories. Highly suggest you check out their website for the upcoming submission calls, which I will drop into the chat in a moment. We're going to start off tonight's reading with Marisca Pichette. Marisca Pichette is the winner of the 2022 Friction Spring Literary Contest and has been nominated for the Pushcart and Dwarf Star Awards. Her work has appeared in Strange Horizons, Vesterian, the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Fantasy Magazine, Flash Fiction Online, Pseudopod, and more. Her speculative poetry collection, Rivers in Your Skin, Sirens in Your Hair, is out now from Android Press. She spends her time in the wood and fields of Western Massachusetts, collecting bones and other fragments. Tonight, she'll be reading The Wall, which appeared in Shacklebound Books anthology, Maelstroms, 23 Tales of Dark Fantasy and the High Seas. Over to you, Marisca.
Thank you. So I'll just jump right in it, and you might slightly recognize this story. The Wall. He is little known now, his work as unremarkable as his face. His name was Humpty Dumpty. One could often view him as he worked along the wharves, laying stone by stone the breakwater wall. He was ever there, mortar by his side as he laid the first level, then the next, then the next. The wall was plain, but each monumental stone stood for Humpty's livelihood as they nestled together, safe on their cushion of mortar. Humpty was tied to his work, slaving each day away no matter the weather. He could be viewed even in the blandest morning, up before dawn on the coldest winter day. It is in part due to this fact that Humpty was little noticed, and as his wall stretched along the pier, his devotion only increased. That was his weakness. A mason loves his work, but Humpty did not work for his wall. Indeed, it could be seen, if any had bothered to look, that the brick path he made for the tavern was of little skill. The flagstone stoop outside the bakery was crooked and flaking mortar. The cobbled side street was uneven. But the breakwater wall, that was meticulous. It was a simple project, yet Humpty spent more time on it than any other he accepted. Humpty spent his life on land, watching the sea with wondrous eyes. He loved the swell of the waves, Amphitrite's touch caressing the docks. Fingers curled around the supports and slowly retreated, reluctance reflected in their mournful rush. He marveled at the lady's purring voice, her sparkling skin and pearly froth. The beauty of the sea captured Humpty Dumpty. And so he found himself constructing the breakwater wall. His work was precise and executed with the utmost care. Each day, when his art was complete, he would sit upon the wall and gaze at the beauty of the sea. He would breathe her air, taste it like the gentry would his wine. He swirled her essence about, let it seep into his consciousness. Slowly, he expelled the delicate vintage, the feel of it lingering on his tongue. I am here with my love. I am here on my wall, working the best job I have ever received. I will stay for as long as I desire. For how long do they think a wall will take? I will endeavor to take as long as possible, to create the most magnificent wall for my beautiful sea to contemplate. It was a wintry evening when Humpty Dumpty sat upon his wall, his work for the day complete, gazing at the sea. The sun slanted along her golden waters, and he leaned forward for a closer, better look. Amphitrite whispered to him, and Humpty leaned further, further. The waves sparkled, and he didn't have a chance to cry out when he overbalanced, falling from his wall into the frigid waters. The passing of a night, a day, and 2 more found the people of the village oblivious to Humpty's disappearance from his wall. It was some time before a fisherman caught him in his net, half eaten by fish. Humpty's body was as unrecognizable in death as in life. Taken from his unfinished wall, he was buried, unmarked and unremarked. Sailors called the event the fault of a man who did not know the waves. In the morning, they climbed aboard their ships, following the sunrise over shimmering, reflective waters. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Marisca Pichette with The Wall. Next up, we're going to have Eric Fomley. Eric Fomley's flash fiction has appeared in Galaxy's Edge, Daily Science Fiction, and Flame Tree Press. You can find more of his flesh on his website, which I'll drop in the chat for a second, or in his books, Portals and Flash Futures. I'm going to hand it over to Eric to read Fragmented from his collection, Portals.
Thank you. Portals is going to be out later this year from Shacklebound, and this is Fragmented. I'm climbing, doing my best to focus on the orange glowing handholds my HUD thinks are the best places to grab onto, and not over at Anne, who looks flawless the way she's bounding up the cliff face. Hurry up, we're gonna miss it, she says. My arms feel like they might fall off. My hands are sore through my nanofiber gloves, and my skin suit isn't doing much in the way of keeping me cool. My back is slick with sweat, and the fabric feels slimy as it slides across my skin. What's the rush? I'm not a free climb, bro. She giggles, a beautiful, sweet sound. If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? I look at the upper edge of the cliff, so close, and push myself to focus. Anne beats me there, of course, and when she pulls herself up, she looks down at me with her arms crossed and a smirk that basically says I'm better than you. It makes me smile. I hoist myself up with all I have left in me and roll onto my back to stare at the greenish blue sky. I'm panting, which is made louder through my mask and helps remind me how out of shape I am. Anne sits beside me and lets her feet dangle over the edge. I can see the look of awe on her face as she looks out on the Vero horizon. I lever myself up onto my elbows, and the sight nearly takes my breath away. We're well above the tree line and have a full view of the twin planets painting the skyline. The orange sun sets between them, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It looks like a holovid, but so much prettier. Whoa is the best word I can manage. See, I told you it was a surprise. Our eyes lock and I smile. My heartstrings tug to share this moment with her, and I wish that things were different. As if she can read my mind, she asks me the one question I've been hoping she never would. They don't know I'm dead, do they? My stomach twists like someone's gut punched me. I feel a shrieking numbness crawl through my veins. The memory of our smoldering, wrecked survey pod scattered in the trees floods my mind. The twisted remains of the woman I love so much. No, I haven't been back. I never told them. They probably think I'm dead. Her hologram starts to fragment, and suddenly it makes sense why she's asking. All I have left of her after the accident is a hollow reconstruction of her stored in my holofeed. I've used it sparingly over the last several days, but the last vestige of her has limited runtime that's nearly at an end. Why haven't you been back? You have a whole life in the core, a career with ambitions, a bright future. Why walk away? What's the point of it all if the person I want to share it with is no longer here? The future doesn't mean much when the end goal was you. She gives me a sad smile and leans her head on my shoulder. The hollow fragmentation gets worse. Pixels start to fade to nothingness, blurring her image. Her legs that dangle off the cliff are starting to fade. We don't have much time left. You need to go back, have a life, be successful, grow old with someone. It doesn't need to end here on this planet. It does need to end with me. I don't know how I can do it without you, I say. My chest is tight. My throat thickens with a lump of sorrow. Tears blur my vision. You're never without me, not here. She reaches her hand to my chest, touching the suit where my heart is, then cups my face. More pixels deplete with each passing moment. Her arms and legs are nearly gone, and her torso is starting to fade. She's scarcely more than loose pixels on the breeze. I can't stop staring into her eyes, enjoying the last chance to take them in and sear them into my memory. Do it for me, she says. Please, do it for me. I love you. A smile tugs at her face and she fades to nothingness. I love you too. I'm left staring at the rocks where she sat. Tears streak my cheeks, and I pull my knees under my chin and sit in a fetal position. I loved her with all of me. My life was built around marrying her. I never could have anticipated the accident. Without her, I don't know what meaning I have. I remember her final words. Please, do it for me. I hoist myself up, look down from the edge of the cliff, and start the downward descent alone.
Thank you. That was Eric Fomley with Fragmented. Next up, we're going to have Jenna Hanchey. Jenna Hanchey has been called a badass fairy and attempts to live up to the title. She is a professor of critical and cultural studies whose research looks at how speculative fiction can imagine decolonization and bring it into being. Her own writing tries to support this project of creating better futures for us all. I'm going to hand it over to Jenna to read her story, The Ocean's Choice, which also appeared in Shacklebound's Maelstrom's 23 Tales of Dark Fantasy of the High Seas. Over to you, Jenna.
Thanks for holding that up, Marisca, and for both of your beautiful stories. My copy is in my office at school. In her 15th year of teaching, the school system fell apart. Before there was any inkling of chaos, Maywin sat in a classroom. Exhaling air as if it were stone, she forced herself to turn away from the glittering ocean beckoning outside and toward the dull-eyed mer-youths arrayed before her in varying degrees of fatigue. She shifted uncomfortably, shaking life into her sleeping legs. It was her least favorite day in land studies, but absolutely required by the syllabus. Excellent work on your topographic soil maps. That was your last project of the semester. Maywin tried to swallow and instead choked on her own traitorous spit. Coughing lightly, she continued. For the rest of the day, I will answer any questions you have about living on land. Starting tomorrow, you're in control of your own schedules. Mix Elner and I are available if you need us, but you may do whatever you need before, well, the student sat up straighter as she forced heavy air back through her lungs. You're all 15 now, and at age 15, you have to choose. Every year, Maywin repeated the same words. Every year, the mer-youths asked her the same questions. Will our legs be different once they lose the ability to transition to flippers? Do you miss the water? Do your gills still work? Do you regret choosing land? She had the whole pattern down pat, mind wandering as her body mechanically answered, yes, yes, I don't know, dissemble. Except this year. She blinked back into her body. I'm sorry, what did you say? I said why. Maywin stared at the blue-haired teen tensely grasping a pen in their fist. Linmar took every assignment seriously and dug into the details. Training kicked in before the teacher could resist, and she found herself parroting talking points at her best student. The ocean requires us to choose land or water. After 15, you lose your ability to transition and your body solidifies into its final form. Yes, but why? Why do we lose the ability to transition? Eyes no longer glazed, they leaned forward hungrily, pinning fervent hopes on Maywin. Still, they hesitated before putting their thought into words. Do we, actually? Is it possible our bodies lose the ability because we choose? No one's ever explained why this happens to us. What if it doesn't have to? Silence held the whole classroom in a tight grip. Maywin rode possible answers like currents in her mind, following where each might lead. In the end, she chose the response she could not predict. I don't know. At 15, Maywin's hair fell thick and sticky, anemone green and just as dense. She couldn't imagine an existence without wind caressing her head, nor one without waves embracing her body. Hours she spent in the shallows, in the tide pools, frantically attempting to understand the creatures who lived in the in-between, activate their lessons before it was too late. When the day came, she had no decision to announce. But she knew that avoiding the ceremony was not the same as avoiding the choice. And so she stood, one foot in the water and one on the sand, and tossed an abalone in the air. "If you're the one who makes us choose," she shouted bitterly at the crashing waves, "then I'll abide by your choice because I refuse to make one." The shell skittered across the sand, and for just a moment, Maywin wondered if it might stay perched upright. For a glittering second, her mind brightened with the opening of an unfettered future. Then the shell fell. Iridescent blue lay buried in the sand, leaving only the white casing visible. Land. Maywin lost a piece of her soul that day. She would have either way. At least this way, it was the ocean's choice which piece of her soul she lost, not hers, never hers. At the end of her 15th year of teaching, at the end of schooling as they knew it, Maywin sat on the beach and cried. Tears of regret, release, renewal. In the end, her most important lesson was the one the students taught. One would have been punished, forced into a decision of someone else's making in the name of the ocean. 2 would have made a scene, 3 a scandal, but all of them together, that made something new. All the 15-year-old Murray youths banded together and refused to choose. They called for a new curriculum to replace the artificial separation of land and water. Pledging themselves to scientific study, they determined to find ways to maintain the ability to move between worlds, even if their own bodies betrayed their decisions. They denied the ocean's choice. A small voice in Maywin's mind whispered, "Maybe the abalone fell so that you could help these kids. Maybe the ocean's choice had a purpose." Bitter laughter burst from her body. It was still the ocean's choice, not hers. She fingered a shell in one hand, feeling the places where it had worn through. If only she had realized she could exist as the holes that laced between the iridescent chrysalis and its rocky fortress. If only someone had told her. Her other hand clenched the sand next to her until a hidden shard pierced her skin. Holding it aloft, Maywin tracked the blood and sand as it coagulated and slowly moved down her palm. Her self-pity sunk with the mixture. If only she had told others. After wiping her tacky blood over the hole in the shell, she hurled the abalone far into the sea. This time, she decided for herself. Waves cresting overhead, she kicked deeper. Her lungs burned. She felt lighter than she should, her ballooning heart meeting the wall of water above in a contest of wills. Unable to breathe for joy or simply unable to breathe, she was not sure, and it didn't matter. She had made her choice. There in the shimmering world below, she laughed, welcoming the ocean's response.
Thank you so much. That was Jenna Hanchey with The Ocean's Choice. Before that, you heard Eric Fomley with Fragmented, and opening the show, Marisca Pichette with The Wall. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, all of our readers and the audience, and Shacklebound Books, who has published all these stories or will shortly. There is a link in the chat where you can find Shacklebound and all the amazing anthologies they've been putting together. Thank you so much for being here at Space Cowboy Books Online. We hope you'll join us for our next Flash Fiction Night, which is coming up on July 25th. There's also a link to that in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, all the links are down below the video. For our next Flash Fiction Night, we're going to have Marie Vibert, F.J. Bergman, and A.C. Wise. So bound to be another wonderful evening of stories. Thank you so much and have a great night.